Welcome to The Uprising, a podcast of LibertyNation.com. I am your host, Scott D. Cosenza. Well, we didn't get the Mueller report this week, at least not into the wee hours of Saturday morning as we record the show, but Bob Barr, Attorney General Barr, did go to Capitol Hill this week, both for Senate and House hearings. Ostensibly, they were budget hearings to discuss the Justice Department budget moving forward, but really they were excuses to examine him on Mueller and the Mueller report. Let's take a listen first to Nina Lowy on the House side for her question for General Barr.
Let me tell you what I'm getting at that I find quite extraordinary. You received a very serious, detailed report, hundreds of pages of high-level information, weighed the factors and conclusions at length, outlined, prepared, edited, and released your memo in less than 48 hours. To me, to do this, it seems your mind must have been already made up. How did you do it?
The question of how the decision was made to prosecute or not prosecute Trump for obstruction of justice, I think we're going to be hearing about that for months, if not years or decades ahead. So it's certainly a fair question for a skeptical congresswoman, and she should be skeptical. And I just want to say it's refreshing to hear a question not designed for to produce a clip for YouTube or a fundraising letter, but seemingly just to get an answer to that question. So let's all have a listen to the Attorney General himself describe how he was able to do it without prejudging or preloading the decision in favor of President Trump.
The thinking of the special counsel was not a mystery to the people at the Department of Justice prior to his submission of the report. He and his people had been interacting with the Deputy Attorney General and lawyers supporting the Deputy Attorney General in his supervision of the special counsel. And in that context, there had been discussions. So there was some inkling as to some of the thinking of the special counsel. Furthermore, on March 5th, I believe, the deputy and I met with Special Counsel Mueller and his team and had a preliminary discussion about the report. So we had an inkling as to what was coming our direction. And so even more thinking within the department was done about that over that time. That was a matter of weeks. And then when the report came, and it came approximately midday on Friday, the Deputy Attorney General and I and our staffs worked closely for the balance of that day, Saturday and Sunday.
They had been thinking about it for weeks. I think there's perhaps a misconception that, and part of this has to do with people simply stating the words incorrectly, that the special counsel is an independent counsel. We used to have an independent counsel statute on the books federally. That's how Ken Starr was appointed under the independent counsel statute, and he was independent. He did not work directly under the Attorney General in that command structure. The special counsel, however, is a person who reports to the Attorney General, which is what Bob Mueller did. So it wasn't like there was some wall where Mueller couldn't hear about any of this evidence or know about it. He could hear about it, and he did hear about it. So he didn't have just a couple days to make his decision. He had weeks. Let the record reflect. Okay. Now we'll get another lesson in our federal criminal laws from the Senate side with Vermont Senator Patrick Leahy. Of all things, he wants to know if Mueller wanted Congress to weigh in on the obstruction charge.
Did he express any expectation or interest in leaving the obstruction decision to Congress?
Not that he didn't say that to me, no.
So he said the obstruction decision should be up to you?
He didn't say that either. But that's generally how the Department of Justice works. Generally, grand juries are to investigate crimes, and a prosecutor's role at the end of the day is binary. Are there charges or no charges? Or is this a crime or not a crime?
To say that it makes no sense for a special counsel to ask Congress to weigh in on a decision to prosecute, it doesn't even make any sense to kind of talk about it in those terms. I don't understand how Mr. Leahy perhaps was asleep when they taught separation of powers back in school. The prosecutors, the Justice Department, is an executive agency. Congress can make no ruling that the executive agency needs to prosecute somebody. A decision to prosecute anybody for anything is an executive decision. It is not a legislative one. It would be totally inappropriate for Mueller to say that. He can't cede the power of the executive to the legislature. It's ridiculous. For those of us who say that the president can't be prosecuted for obstruction of justice, that's why we're saying it, because the president himself would have to prosecute himself for obstruction of justice. It's an executive decision, and he is the executive in charge. Now, that doesn't mean that he's above the law, because the law provides for impeachment. So, if he did do that, that would be a high crime or misdemeanor. Therefore, Congress has the remedy of, you got it, impeachment and removal from office. That's how a Congress can address criminality in the executive. I can tell you as soon as this report comes out, the Democrats who want to see Trump gone are going to be able to find evidence for obstruction in many different places. And they'll be able to say, oh, there's obstruction here and there's obstruction there. Well, but there's not a decision to prosecute obstruction. So bring your case to the people, bring it through impeachment proceedings that we know so many Democrats wish to run with, and make the case. But to spin the wheels and act like General Barr is somehow playing dirty or fast and loose with the facts in order to help his pal Donald Trump, well, that just doesn't hold water. Absent any evidence to the contrary, that can be rejected out of hand as an attempt at what it is, to sort of paint the process as corrupt rather than their own motivations.